The 100 Years' War was not one single long war. It was a series of brutal conflicts. It was a long and bloody struggle between two great medieval powers, England and France. This epic saga of kings, castles and conquests stretched from 1337 to 1453. But its roots ran even deeper into the past. For centuries, English kings had held lands in France, a legacy of their Norman and Angevin ancestors. This always created tension. The French kings wanted to rule all of France. The English kings did not want to give up their rich French territories, a constant source of wealth and pride. The immediate spark that ignited this century of warfare was a succession crisis. In 1328, the French king, Charles IV, died without a son to inherit his throne. This was a major problem for the French royal line, the House of Capet, which had ruled for over 300 years. The French lords chose a new king, Philip VI, from a different branch of the family, the House of Valois. However, another man believed he had a better claim. This man was Edward III, the young and ambitious King of England. His claim came through his mother Isabella, who was the daughter of a French king. The French nobility, however, did not want an English king on their throne and rejected his claim, citing a law that the crown could not pass through a woman. This rejection was a deep insult to Edward III. He was a proud and powerful monarch, ruler of a kingdom that was growing in strength and confidence. He saw an opportunity not just to defend his existing lands in France like the rich Duchy of Gascony, but to claim the ultimate prize, the French crown itself. The conflict was about more than just land and titles. It was about honor, dynastic right, and national identity. The stage was set for a dramatic and violent clash that would shape the future of both England and France for generations to come, a true medieval epic. The war began when King Philip VI of France decided to confiscate the English-held territory of Gascony in 1337. This was the final provocation for Edward III. In response, he gathered his armies, renewed his claim to the French throne, and prepared for invasion. This was not merely a squabble between nobles, it was the beginning of a long and devastating period of history. For the people of France, it meant decades of English armies marching across their lands, burning villages and destroying crops. For the people of England, it meant high taxes to pay for the endless campaigns and the constant demand for soldiers to fight and die on foreign soil. But the long years of the war saw many famous leaders on both sides. For England, the conflict began with the formidable Edward III. He was a skilled military strategist and a charismatic leader who inspired loyalty in his men. His son, also named Edward, was even more famous. Known as the Black Prince, he was a fearsome warrior, renowned for his courage and his ruthlessness in battle. He led English armies to stunning victories and became a legendary figure in his own time. Later in the war, another English king, Henry V, would revive England's fortunes with his incredible ambition and military genius, a king immortalized by his victories. On the French side, the Valois kings struggled to hold their kingdom together against the English onslaught. Philip VI was the king who first faced Edward III's invasion, and he suffered humiliating defeats that shook the confidence of the French nobility. His son, John II, was captured by the English at the Battle of Poitiers, a disaster that plunged France into chaos and despair. His successor, Charles V, known as the Wise, was a much more capable ruler. He avoided big, risky battles and patiently worked to win back lost territory piece by piece, showing that strategy could be as powerful as brute force on the battlefield. Later in the war, when France was on the brink of total collapse, an unlikely hero emerged. This was not a king or a prince, but a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc. She claimed to hear divine voices telling her to drive the English out of France and to see the rightful French king, Charles VII, crowned. Her passion and faith were incredibly inspiring. She gave the demoralized French soldiers a new sense of hope and purpose. Joan of Arc's appearance was a pivotal moment, a symbol of a new kind of French resistance, one that was not just about nobles and knights, but about the very soul of the nation. These leaders were not just names in a history book, they were the central actors in a grand drama. Their personal ambitions, their strengths and their weaknesses directly influenced the course of the war. The rivalry between Edward III and Philip VI set the conflict in motion. The military brilliance of the Black Prince created an aura of English invincibility. The careful planning of Charles V showed France how to recover, and the spiritual fervour of Joan of Arc demonstrated that leadership could come from the most unexpected of places, changing the very nature of the fight. The 100 Years' War was defined by several key battles that changed the course of the conflict. One of the first and most important was the Battle of Crécy in 1346. Here, a smaller English army, led by Edward III, faced a much larger French force. The English chose their ground carefully, positioning themselves on a hillside. Their greatest weapon was the English longbow. As the French knights charged uphill in their heavy armor, the English archers unleashed a devastating storm of arrows. The longbows could pierce armor and create chaos, and the French attack fell apart. Crécy was a shocking victory that proved that disciplined infantry could defeat a noble cavalry charge. A decade later, in 1356, the English won another incredible victory at the Battle of Poitiers. This time, the English army was led by Edward, the Black Prince. Once again, the English were outnumbered by the French. And once again, the English longbowmen played a decisive role, raining arrows down upon the advancing French knights. The battle ended in a total disaster for France. Not only was their army destroyed, but their king, John II, was captured on the battlefield. He was taken to London as a prisoner, and France was forced to pay an enormous ransom for his release, a moment of profound national humiliation. After a period of French recovery, the war entered a new phase with the English invasion led by King Henry V. In 1415, he achieved one of the most celebrated victories in English history at the Battle of Agincourt. His army was small, exhausted and suffering from disease. They were cornered by a massive French army on a muddy field. The conditions were terrible, but they worked to the English advantage. The French knights, weighed down by their armor, became stuck in the deep mud. They were easy targets for the relentless storm of arrows from Henry's longbowmen. The victory was total and devastating for the French nobility. These battles were more than just victories and defeats. They marked a change in medieval warfare. They showed that the era of the armored knight dominating the battlefield was coming to an end. The power of the English longbow demonstrated that well-trained common soldiers could be more effective than noble-born knights. The victories at Crécy, Poitiers and Agincourt became legendary in England, building a powerful sense of national pride and military superiority. For France, these defeats were catastrophic, leading to political chaos, civil war, and the near-total collapse of their kingdom. For many years, it seemed that England would win the war. After the victory at Agincourt, Henry V forced the French to sign the Treaty of Troyes in 1420. This treaty was a complete English triumph. It disinherited the French Dauphin, Charles, and named Henry V as the heir to the French throne. Henry even married the French king's daughter to seal the deal. It looked as if the two crowns of England and France would finally be united under an English king. However, Henry V died unexpectedly just 2 years later, leaving his infant son, Henry VI, as the king of both kingdoms, a ruler in name only. The turning point for France came with the appearance of Joan of Arc in 1429. At this time, the English were besieging the strategic city of Orléans. The French were losing hope. Joan's arrival electrified the French army. She inspired them with her belief that God was on their side. Under her spiritual leadership, the French broke the siege of Orléans. This victory was a huge boost to French morale. It was the first major French success in years, and it showed them that the English were not invincible. Soon after, Joan led the Dauphin to the city of Reims, the traditional site for crowning French kings, where he was officially crowned King Charles VII. Joan of Arc was eventually captured by enemies and executed by the English in 1431, but her spirit lived on. Her actions had awakened a new sense of national identity and unity among the French people. They were no longer just fighting for a king, they were fighting for France itself. King Charles VII also grew into a capable leader. He modernized his army, introducing professional soldiers and, crucially, developing powerful cannons. This new French artillery could now smash down the walls of the castles and towns that the English had held for so many years, turning the tide of siege warfare. The war finally ended in 1453 with the Battle of Castillon. In a fitting reversal of fortunes from Crécy and Agincourt, a French army used its powerful cannons to crush an attacking English force. This victory secured Gascony for the French and marked the end of the long conflict. By the war's conclusion, England had lost all of its territories in France, except for the small port of Calais. The dream of an English empire in France was over. The war had exhausted England, leading to civil war at home. For France, despite the terrible suffering, the war forged a stronger, more unified kingdom with a powerful central monarchy.